It's 1925. Alcohol is illegal. Every bar in America has been shut down by federal law, every distillery padlocked, every bottle of whiskey, every glass of wine, every pint of beer banned. The 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution made it a crime to manufacture, sell, or transport intoxicating beverages anywhere in the country. The Volstead Act defined intoxicating as anything over 0.5% alcohol. And the result of this noble experiment? Enforced sobriety. New York City alone has 32,000 speakeasies. Al Capone is pulling in $60 million a year selling bootleg liquor in Chicago. The federal government is deliberately poisoning industrial alcohol, and thousands of Americans are going blind or dying from drinking it, and somehow the country has never been more alive. Welcome to Prohibition. Let's start with what America actually looks like in 1925. The cities are a strange collision of the future and the past. Horse-drawn carts still share the roads with over 17 million automobiles, roughly one car for every 2 households. Gas costs 21 cents a gallon. The streets of Manhattan are lined with Beaux-Arts mansions on the Upper East Side and crumbling tenements on the Lower East. Neon signs are just starting to appear. Bright tubes of color, bolted to storefronts and theater marquees glowing against the brick and stone. In Chicago, Union Station has just opened after 10 years of construction, a $75 million Beaux-Arts Cathedral of Transit, the third busiest station in the country. Wacker Drive is still under construction. The skyline is climbing. Art Deco towers are going up, geometric, angular, gleaming. The Chrysler Building won't be finished for 5 more years, but the style is already everywhere. The average American earns about $5,400 a year. A new house costs $11,600. A dozen eggs costs 18 cents. A gallon of milk, 50 cents. Monthly rent runs about $75. It's not a bad life if you follow the rules, but nobody's following the rules. Here's the thing about Prohibition that most people get wrong. It actually worked at first. In the early years after 1920, alcohol consumption dropped by as much as 70%. People really did drink less. The temperance movement had spent decades campaigning, and when the law passed, a lot of Americans genuinely tried to comply. But the drop didn't last. By 1925, the system is cracking wide open, and the crack starts in the basement. A speakeasy is an illegal bar hidden behind a locked door. The name comes from the practice of speaking quietly, speaking easy, when ordering a drink so the cops outside wouldn't hear. They're everywhere, behind barbershops, below laundries, inside apartments with blacked-out windows, through unmarked doors and alleyways. New York has over 30,000 of them. Chicago has thousands more. To get in, you need a password. Sometimes it's a word. Swordfish was a famous one. Sometimes it's a knock pattern. Sometimes a membership card. The door has a slot or a peephole, and someone on the other side decides if you look like a cop or a customer. Inside, it's another world entirely. Jazz pouring from a stage in the corner, smoke hanging in layers, men in 3-piece suits, women, and this is new, drinking in public, smoking cigarettes, dancing the Charleston in knee-length dresses that would have caused a scandal 5 years earlier. The most famous speakeasies become institutions. The 21 Club on West 52nd Street in Manhattan has a secret button behind the bar that, when pressed, releases the liquor bottles down a chute designed to smash them on rocks below. destroying the evidence in seconds if cops bust through the door. The Cotton Club in Harlem is owned by a gangster and staffed by black musicians who aren't allowed to sit in the audience. The Green Mill in Chicago has escape tunnels running under the building. Every speakeasy has a system, an alarm, a back exit, a hiding spot for the bottles. The paranoia is part of the atmosphere. So is the thrill, the flappers. They're the cultural earthquake of the decade. Young women with bobbed hair cut above the ears, wearing Coco Chanel's new silhouettes, high hemlines, dropped waistlines, straight sleeveless tops designed for movement. They smoke, they drink, they dance until 2 in the morning in rooms full of strangers. And they represent something that terrifies the old guard, women who simply don't care about the old rules anymore. The 19th Amendment gave women the vote in 1920. The speakeasies gave them the night. If you're still watching, subscribe and tell me in the comments, could you survive a week here? Now the music. Jazz was born in black communities, New Orleans, then Memphis, then Harlem. By 1925, it's the sound of the speakeasy. In New York, Lenox Avenue in Harlem is lined with clubs. The Cotton Club at 142nd Street is the most famous, owned by mobster Oni Madden, who runs bootleg liquor through the back, while Duke Ellington's orchestra plays on stage. The place is gorgeous and deeply ugly at the same time. Black performers, white-only audience, that's the deal. Down the street at Small's Paradise, the policy is different. The audience is integrated. The waiters dance the Charleston while carrying trays of illegal drinks. In Chicago, the Green Mill on North Broadway in the uptown neighborhood is Al Capone's personal jazz club. It's got tunnels under the building for quick escapes when the police show up. Billie Holiday plays there. Al Jolson plays there. The music is live, loud, and dangerous, and the whole scene runs on bootleg liquor, which raises the obvious question, where does the liquor come from? Everywhere. Rum runners bring Caribbean rum and Canadian whiskey across the border by boat, by car, by foot. In Chicago's Little Italy, the Jenner brothers hand out 1-gallon copper stills to families and pay them to brew raw alcohol in their kitchens. Moonshine distillers in Appalachia are running full operations in the woods. And across the country, people are making what's called bathtub gin, a rough, barely drinkable spirit mixed from industrial alcohol, juniper berries, and whatever else is on hand. A cocktail that cost 15 cents before Prohibition now costs 75 cents. Domestic spirits that averaged $1.39 a quart in 1918 now cost $4. The price is high because the supply chain includes bribes, armed guards, smuggling routes, and the constant risk of arrest. Bootleg alcohol is the most profitable illegal commodity in American history. The danger isn't just legal, it's physical. A bad batch of moonshine can blind you. A barrel of industrial alcohol that wasn't properly redistilled can kill you in hours. People know this. They drink it anyway. Because here's what the temperance movement didn't account for. They could close every legal bar in America, but they couldn't close the need that brought people to the bar in the first place. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the desire to feel for 1 hour like the rules don't apply to you. Prohibition didn't eliminate drinking. It just made drinking dangerous. And one man controls more of it than anyone else. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, Scarface. He took over the Chicago operation from Johnny Torrio in 1925 and turned it into an empire. 10,000 speakeasies under his control, $60 million a year in income, a net worth estimated at $100 million by 1927. His secret? He doesn't just sell liquor. He owns the system. Capone pays $500,000 a month to Chicago police. That's roughly $6 million in today's money. Every month, cops warn speakeasies about raids, evidence disappears, judges drop charges. A federal investigation later revealed that in Philadelphia, 24 high-ranking officers earning between $1,500 and $2,500 a year had somehow accumulated $750,000 in assets between them. Nobody asked where the money came from because everybody already knew. And when bribery doesn't work, there's violence. The streets of Chicago in the mid-20s are a war zone between rival gangs. Capone's outfit versus George Bugs Moran's North Side gang. In New York, Lucky Luciano is building what will become the modern American mafia, working alongside Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. The Bugs and Meyer mob, one of the most violent bootlegging operations on the East Coast. These aren't romantic figures. They're businessmen with guns, and their business model requires territory, which requires eliminating competition. The violence peaks on February 14th, 1929, Valentine's Day, when men dressed as police officers line up 7 of Bugs Moran's associates in a Chicago garage and execute them with Thompson submachine guns. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It shocks the nation. It's also the beginning of the end, not for crime, but for Prohibition itself. Here's the part that makes your stomach turn. The federal government knows that bootleggers are stealing industrial alcohol, about 60 million gallons a year by the mid-20s, washing out the chemicals and selling it to speakeasies. So in 1926, under President Coolidge, federal chemists begin adding methanol, wood alcohol, to denatured industrial alcohol. Methanol is a poison. It causes blindness, paralysis, organ failure, and death. The government knows this. They do it anyway. The logic is simple. If the stolen alcohol is deadly, people will stop drinking it. They don't stop. In New York in 1926 alone, approximately 750 people die from methanol-laced bootleg liquor. Across the country, estimates run as high as 10,000 dead by the time Prohibition ends. Some estimates pushed the number to 50,000. The federal government of the United States deliberately poisoned its own citizens as an enforcement strategy, and most Americans at the time had no idea it was happening. And it wasn't just methanol. The quality of bootleg liquor was wildly inconsistent. Some of it was decent Canadian whiskey that had been smuggled across the Great Lakes by rum runners. Some of it was moonshine distilled in copper pots in Appalachian hollers by men who knew what they were doing. But a lot of it was industrial solvent that had been crudely washed of its most obvious poisons and flavored with juniper oil to taste like gin. People drank it because it was what they could get, and they kept drinking it because the alternative was sobriety, in a country that had made sobriety feel like submission. There were loopholes, too. Wine was still legal for religious purposes, and the number of Americans who suddenly discovered they needed sacramental wine skyrocketed. Doctors could prescribe medicinal whiskey for ailments like the flu, toothaches, and anxiety. Pharmacies became de facto liquor stores. And Section 29 of the Volstead Act allowed every household to produce up to 200 gallons of non-intoxicating cider and fruit juice per year. 200 gallons. People fermented everything. Grape juice kits sold with a wink and a label that read, "Do not add yeast or store in a warm place, as this will cause fermentation." The law was a sieve. By the early 1930s, the experiment is clearly failing. The Great Depression has gutted the economy, and the government desperately needs tax revenue that a legal alcohol industry could provide. Speakeasies outnumber the old legal saloons. Organized crime has more money and more power than anyone predicted. Public respect for the law has collapsed. When 2/3 of federal criminal cases are prohibition violations, something is broken. 74% of voters call for repeal. On December 5, 1933, Utah becomes the 36th state to ratify the 21st Amendment, and Prohibition is over. It lasted 13 years, 10 months, and 18 days. What did it leave behind? A permanently transformed America. Jazz, which might have stayed in Harlem clubs, had gone national because speakeasies needed music. Women, who might have waited another decade to claim public space, had walked through speakeasy doors and refused to walk back out. Organized crime, which had been local and small-time, had become a national network with structures that survived for decades. And somewhere in the national memory, a lesson that banning a thing people want doesn't make the want disappear. It just moves it underground, raises the price, and hands the profit to whoever is willing to break the law. The 1920s weren't roaring because people were happy. They were roaring because an entire country was breaking its own rules, and the noise was loud enough to drown out the consequences. The poisoned drinks, the gunshots on Clark Street, the bodies in the Chicago River. It was the decade America tried to outlaw human nature. Human nature won. That's a wrap. Prohibition remains one of the most dramatic social experiments in American history, a constitutional amendment born from genuine concern about alcohol's damage to families and communities, undone by the simple reality that you cannot legislate desire. The speakeasies are gone. The lesson isn't drop a comment, subscribe for more journeys through time.